The horrors of working retail. For those of you who are new to my channel, my name is Sunny. Before I start, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications. Let's shoot for 1,000 likes on today's video, guys. Without further ado, let's get into it. All right, so for those of you who don't know, I worked in retail for almost 4 years. And needless to say, I could write a book about all the stuff that I've seen. You know, angry customers, people coming in and shoplifting, people getting arrested in the store, all the typical retail BS, right? Now, like I said, I could write a book about all the stuff I've seen during my time working retail, except I'm a terrible writer, so I figured I'd just make a video about it instead. So today, I'm going to be going down my list of some of the weirdest things I've seen while working in customer service. Now, in retail, you're pretty much always going to run into people coming in and stealing, or people coming in and trying to scam you. But sometimes you'll run into people stealing or scamming in, let's just say, some very creative ways. About a month or two into me working there, this really tall redheaded guy came into the store. And I don't like to make assumptions based on people's appearances, but he looked really sketchy, man. Like, he was definitely up to something. He had this super dirty backwards hat on. You know, his hair was super greasy. His eyes were really red. And to top it all off, he was dressed like it was still 2012. In fact, he was wearing a shirt that said "Can't touch my swag" on it. Which, side note, if someone's still dressed like it's 2012, you know, if they're dressed like we're still in the swag era, they're guilty of whatever crime it is they're trying to commit. That's not even up for debate. That's not even a joke either. That's literally the common denominator with all these types of guys. Aside from that, this guy walks in and he walks over to the section where we sell cologne, and he just starts piling all these cologne bottles into this little drawstring bag he had. Now, mind you, pretty much every bottle of cologne we sold had some sort of security tag on it. So if he left the store, the alarms were gonna go off like crazy. Except this guy didn't care. He walks out, setting off pretty much every alarm we had at the exit of our store in front of everybody, because he had at least 20 bottles of cologne in his little bag. Now, some of you are probably watching this thinking to yourself,
"But Sonny, that wasn't even that crazy. People steal like that in retail all the time. What are you, stupid?"
Now, yes, I know this wasn't that crazy at all, but just let me explain what happened next, okay? So about 4 hours go by, and I eventually see this guy walk into the store who looked very familiar. And like the guy I previously mentioned, he also walks over to the cologne section. And because I can see this guy from my register, I kind of examine him for a bit. And I eventually come to realize that it's the swag guy again, except this time he was wearing a completely different outfit. He abandoned the infamous "Can't touch my swag" shirt and instead donned a white button-up tee and some sunglasses. Except he still had his dirty ass hat on from before, so we all clearly knew it was him. Bro really thought he could sneak past us like that. He would have been better off wearing a pair of mustache disguise glasses. So eventually my manager sees him trying to steal cologne again, and unbeknownst to him, she immediately calls the cops. So after about 10 minutes of this guy piling cologne into his drawstring bag once again, the cops show up. And as soon as he sees them, he immediately darts for the exit, except these cops were much stronger and faster than this guy, so they get a hold of him very quickly, and they eventually arrest him. Except they didn't arrest him right away because he was struggling the entire time and pretty much crashing out in front of a bunch of families trying to shop. I forgot to mention earlier that they were arresting this guy in front of the entrance to the store. So absolutely everybody was staring, including myself, because this whole thing was happening right next to my register. And since I still had to help customers while this whole thing was happening next to me, it became super awkward because of how uncomfortable they all were having to watch this. But the funniest part about this whole thing was that while this was happening next to me, my manager Martha comes over to me and she goes, "Congratulations. Here's your prize." And she hands me a beach towel with the company logo on it that I apparently won as a prize from some raffle we did, except she did it in the most nonchalant way possible. Like, there's a guy getting arrested right next to us. How are you not seeing this? So eventually I start dying laughing because of how goofy this whole thing is, but Martha doesn't find it funny at all. In fact, she looks very annoyed. So she gets a little bit closer to me in a very menacing way, and she says to me, she says, "Why are you laughing?" And I tried to explain why, but before I can tell her, she just walks away. But yeah, after that, the cops eventually escort this guy out of the store, and we pretty much all watch this guy get thrown into the back of their police cruiser. But as I'm watching this take place, I have a bit of an epiphany. You see, it was at this moment that I realized you really could touch his swag after all. And after that day, we never saw him ever again. No, I'm just kidding. He ended up coming in like a week later wearing a YOLO shirt this time, trying to steal the same stuff again. And he actually got away this time. Except not really. So not even 5 minutes after this guy leaves the store, some really jacked guy comes in holding a ton of items in his arms. And he walks over to me and all the other cashiers and he drops all these items on our counter. And he looks at us and he says with a big smile on his face, "It's okay, guys. I got this stuff back." And after he says this, all the other cashiers and I pretty much just stare at this guy in awe for around 10 seconds. And then he leaves without saying another word. And we never saw the swag guy or the jacked guy ever again. The jacked guy probably beat the swag guy to a pulp in the parking lot. So I guess it's safe to say the swag guy really did only live once. Okay, so this one is pretty short, but it's very weird to say the least. So there was this one time where I was the only one on register helping customers. And eventually this guy gets in line talking on the phone, but like really loud. And he's holding a basketball in his other hand. Now, I don't think he was on drugs or drunk or anything like that because he was clearly coherent, but he had to have been on something because this man was not acting normal at all. And honestly, I need whatever it is this guy was smoking because this is what happened next. So once again, he's on his phone talking to somebody and he's basically explaining how much he loves his basketball and that he wishes he could marry this basketball and that he wishes he could make love to this basketball out loud while there's like young kids around. And for those of you wondering, he wasn't keeping it PG either. He was basically describing how he was going to violate this basketball, okay? And because I was the only person on register, I had no choice but to help him. So reluctantly, I say out loud, "I can help you right here, sir." So he comes over to me and he's like, "Hello." And I'm like, "Hey, how's it going?" And he says to me, "One basketball, please." And I'm like, "Okay, will that be all?" And he's like, "Yes, just the basketball." Almost as if he couldn't contain himself. Like that's exactly how he said it. So he hands me the money and I'm about to hand him the basketball. But me being the good Samaritan that I am, I was like, "Would you like a bag today, sir?" And he gets real close to me and he says, "No, I don't want a bag. But just remember one thing, kid. If you or anyone tries to come in between my basketball and I will fucking end you." And after he says that, I look at him, I smile, I look into his big, beautiful eyes and I go, "Thank you for shopping with us today, sir. Have a wonderful night." And then after that, I leaned forward, I kissed him on his little forehead and he took off. And I never saw him ever again after that day. Nah, I'm just kidding. That didn't happen. But if the term ball is life was a person, it would have been that guy. Okay, so this one wasn't even crazy or anything. It was just really sad. So one day I'm working and this little old man comes up to the counter wearing a hood and some shades. And he was trying to purchase 3 pairs of lingerie. So I start scanning these items and the whole time he seems super on edge. But I get it. I mean, people would probably be weirded out if they saw a little old man carrying around lingerie like that. He even asked me to double bag them for him so people wouldn't see what he was buying. So as I'm bagging his items, I ask him how his day's going. And he tells me it's going good, but he kept looking around to see if anybody was watching him while I was trying to talk to him. And then he starts asking me if I think the lingerie he's buying looks good and what my opinion was on them. And I was kind of at a loss when he asked that because I don't know how to answer that question. But I told him that they looked good and he didn't really ask me anything else after that. So we eventually finish the transaction and he leaves. But about a half an hour goes by and he comes back in and he walks over to me specifically. And I was a little worried because I thought maybe I messed up the transaction somehow. Except that couldn't have been the case. You know, it's not like I gave him back the wrong change or anything. He paid with card. But he didn't come in because of an issue with the transaction. He wanted to ask me something. And at first I thought it was another lingerie question. You know, maybe he wanted me to model it for him or something. But he comes real close to me and he says, "Excuse me, young man, can I ask you something?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, what's up?" And he goes, "I'm not familiar with this new technology. Is the number you receive phone calls from the same number you also receive texts from?" I was a little surprised he asked me that because I figured it was common knowledge, but he was a lot older, so I let it slide. So I then tell him, "Yes, sir, you receive texts from the same number you also receive calls from." And after I say this, his entire demeanor changes and he looks at me and he says, "So you mean she's not texting me back?" And it was at this point I knew exactly what was going on. And I didn't want to have to be the one to tell this little old man that the woman he was trying to pursue was clearly not interested in him or his lingerie. So because I didn't have the heart to break the news to him, I just kind of shrugged and said nothing. But he knew the answer. She was clearly ignoring him. And I don't know if this woman was someone he knew in real life or if she was some kind of Instagram bot or OnlyFans model. But regardless of that, it was super hard to watch. And if that guy is watching this video somehow, I hope you're doing better, sir. And I hope you returned the lingerie and got your money back. Okay, so last but not least, we have what I call the mother-daughter incident. And I'm not gonna lie to you guys, this was probably the most infuriating thing I ever dealt with during my time in retail. Ooh, man, I get heated just thinking about it. But anyways, one day I'm working up front and I see this mother and her daughter, who looks like she's around 21 years old, enter the line with 2 full shopping carts absolutely packed to the brim with stuff. And from first glance, they looked very bohemian. I'm pretty sure the mother was barefoot. And no hate towards people who live a sort of bohemian lifestyle, but they're typically the worst customers to deal with because they do whatever the fuck they want without any kind of consideration for the people around them. But aside from that, the line eventually starts to die down and now it's their turn. Except instead of going to an open register so they can pay for their items, they decided to just stand there and keep looking at stuff, which typically isn't an issue, except while they were still browsing, they weren't letting anyone else go ahead of them in line. And at this point, everyone behind them was clearly getting upset because come the fuck on. And because I didn't want people to start getting angry in line, I called the mother over, letting her know that my register is open and that I'm ready to help her pay for her 10,000 items. Because this happened at around 8:30, and since the store closes at 9:30, I wanted to get this done as quickly as possible. So out loud, I say, "Ma'am, I can help you right over here." She ignores me. So I wait a moment and I call her a second time. "Ma'am, I can take you and your daughter right here." She ignores me again. So I wait another moment. And then I call her a third time. "Ma'am, register 2 is open. I can help you right here." She ignores me again. So I finally say in a louder voice, "Ma'am, I can help you." But before I can finish, she cuts me off and goes, "I heard you the first time, okay? Don't rush me." Now, I was ready to unleash hell upon this woman and her dopey looking daughter for talking to me like that, but I also wanted to keep my job because at my old job, we were absolutely never allowed to speak up when a customer was acting out of line. And me having bills to pay, I had to swallow my pride and keep my mouth shut, even if it meant having a stroke from how stupid these people were. But after she snaps at me, she does a complete 180 and suddenly becomes all nice to me. And she eventually starts putting her items on the counter so I can scan them. So I start scanning her items, and after about 3 out of her 3,000 that she's going to buy, she stops me and she's like, hey, whoa. I haven't decided whether or not we're buying any of this yet. And after she says this, I look into her eyes with absolutely zero emotion and say nothing. But on the inside, I wanted to tear her and her ugly daughter limb from limb. I wanted to hit them both with the 1-2 wombo combo and send them into the stratosphere because of how enraged I was. I felt like Benson from that one episode of Regular Show where he wasn't allowed to yell and he started destroying everything around him. Because how in the hell are you going to bring me 2 full carts of useless garbage and not even know whether or not you want any of it? But anyways, she starts telling me whether or not she wants each individual item before I scan it, which obviously took forever. But not only was she like, maybe I don't want this, or maybe we can come back another day for these, for each item. She started asking me questions about each product before I scanned it, as if I was some sort of expert. But anyways, she keeps doing the same thing for each item, and now we're like an hour into this abysmal transaction. And the store is now closed. My manager, Anthony, is waiting by the exit so we can eventually let them out and lock the doors, just as furious as me because we all want to go home. However, I finished scanning everything, and now it's time for her to pay. So she grabs her little wallet and she starts looking for her card. But something's wrong. Something's not looking right here. It's taking a little bit too long to find her card. So to my surprise, she looks up at me and she starts laughing and she goes, "Oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing, but I left my card at home. Can we hold this stuff overnight?" And as soon as she said this, I felt my entire nervous system implode. I don't think I've ever been more furious towards a customer in my life. So my manager, Anthony, overhears our conversation and he comes over and he's like, "Yeah, we'll hold it overnight for you." And the mother and daughter go, "Great, thank you so much." And they leave. And as soon as Anthony locks the doors behind them, he looks at me and he says, "Yeah, we're not holding that overnight." And that meant we had to put every single item away. Fuck them. But that's not even where this story ends, dude. The next day comes around, and luckily it's my day off. But my coworker at the time, who was also present during this whole mess, texts me saying that they came back the next day and loaded 2 entirely different carts full of stuff. And they did the exact same thing, except the transaction didn't just last an hour. It lasted 3 full hours because they kept having issues with the cards they were trying to pay with. And on top of all that, the mother told him that she was an empath and that she can feel people's energy and that he's an extremely kind and patient person and that they were here the day before and the guy who helped them was rude and impatient with them. And in case you guys don't get the hint, she was referring to me. Luckily, after that happened, I never saw either of them again, and hopefully I never do, because I'll probably go to prison if we ever cross paths again. I'd probably get put on death row. Alright guys, that's gonna wrap up today's video. I hope you all enjoyed. I'm probably gonna make a part 2 to this video because I have quite a few more of these kinds of stories, and I really enjoyed making this for you guys. If you guys have not already, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications. Once again guys, let's shoot for 1,000 likes on this video today. Tell you what, if we get 1,000 likes on today's video, I will buy every person who likes the video their very own PS5. That's not even a joke either. Everybody who likes this video will be getting their very own brand new PlayStation 5. But yeah, that's pretty much it guys. God bless.